At center number 2, you should have 2 foldables. One folds into a trifold brochure similar to other ones that we've used in class, and that'll give you some notes about text structure, and we're going to go through each of those one by one. You're going to probably want a highlighter or a colored pen in which to highlight important information and take notes. You're also going to have a piece of paper that you can fold in half and make a booklet, and on the front will be a list of all the different text structures, and then on the inside will be an example with a graphic organizer, and after each of the explanations you'll go back and forth practicing them. So this lesson is going to focus on text structure. We've talked about the importance of informational text, and that's going to be the focus of our second half of the year. And we look at text structure, specifically 5 different ways that we can organize, or that we see text is often organized: compare and contrast, cause and effect, problem and solution, chronological order, and description. And these are 5 text structures you're going to want to become very familiar with. A couple of things to know, brain facts. And I found these at a website called dbrainfit.com. I found this first one rather interesting because we just studied the Victorian era, but it says, we are not getting smarter. Since the Victorian era, IQs have gone down 1.6 points per decade for a total of 13.35 points. Next, brain cells cannibalize themselves as a last-ditch source of energy to ward off starvation. So in very real ways, dieting can force your brain to eat itself. Your brain storage capacity is considered virtually unlimited. It doesn't get used up like the RAM in your computer, so there's always room for more information. And the last one, and this is the reason that we're really going to focus on our text structures, the adult working memory can only hold 7 objects or chunks of information at one time. And that's why it's very important when you're reading, we talk about this a lot, to stop, take a break, think about what you've read, put it into smaller, big ideas, because you're not going to remember all those little ones. Your brain isn't set up to do that. So using text structure is going to help us with these little bits, these chunks. How does knowing the organizational structure of the text help you understand information better? Well, first, it helps you break information into smaller chunks so that you can remember it easier. We just found out that your brain can't hold a whole lot of information at one time. Only 7 pieces of information. And I would bet that if you looked around at the world around you, we look at your phone number is made up of 7 digits, you're going to find out that there's a little bit of science and related to that. Text structure and knowing them helps you determine if the information you're reading about is reliable. It helps to make sense of the information because you have a way of organizing it in your mind. It helps you understand the author's purpose for writing it, which helps you understand it better. And then it also helps you develop your own opinion as you read. So the first text structure is compare and contrast. For each one, we're going to talk about signal words that you use to recognize them and some questions. So the questions that we look at when we're comparing and contrasting, if I'm reading something, I want to ask myself, what's being compared? How are they similar? And how are they different? Some signal words I might notice: both, similarly, also, however, to, differ, but, same, yet, while, and on the other hand. And this by no means is a list of all the words that you could use, but it's a good start. And once you recognize some of them, you can see that other ones would sound very similar to them. For example, it just said similar instead of similarly. Once we have figured out the pattern that the text is structured into, and we found the signal words, we want to pull out the important pieces of information, the little chunks that we really need to remember, and then we put them into graphic organizers. One type of graphic organizer you could use is just a chart like this, where you put your topic, the 2 things that you're comparing, how they're similar, and then how they're different. This is probably one that you're most familiar with, is a Venn diagram. And we know that this Venn diagram could have 3 or 4 things, and then the more complicated the subject matter, you might have more more circles part of your diagram. If you're somebody who has a hard time with handwriting and writes really big, sometimes a Venn diagram isn't the best way for you to organize your information because you have to cram the information in there. And if you can't read it, then it's not very helpful to you. And so then you can put it into a chart. One of the things that we'll talk about as we get into comparing and contrasting and really looking at information more critically is attributes. What quality do they have that's similar? What category do they fall into that makes them similar or different? And we can add a little more information to it. So taking a look at this, in your pamphlet foldable, the second one at your station, you should have this paragraph on the inside cover next to compare and contrast. And what I want you to do is highlight signal words as we go through it and fill in the graphic organizer, identifying the important information. In recent years, email has eclipsed traditional postal mail. Both means of communication allow writers to connect with another person one-on-one. Both require the writer to write and communicate clearly. However, snail mail can take days to be delivered. Email is delivered almost instantly. Also, some writers believe that taking the time to print out a typed document or handwrite a letter leads to more thoughtful communication. So just comparing from your notes page, those signal words, I can see the word both. So you should have both highlighted here and highlighted here. Another word I see is however. That shows me a contrast. Now I'm not talking about how they're similar, but how they're different. I see another word here also, which looks like it's going to connect to this contrasting detail. So now that I've found my signal words, I want to go back and pull the information that's similar and different. And you have a graphic organizer like this. So what you're going to do right now is you're going to pause. Well, once this video stops, you're going to, before you move on to the next one, label both of these categories with the two things that were being compared. And then list in here what was similar. List in here what was similar, and then on either side the facts that you found about what made them different. Okay?